I heard one of their callers say something that stopped me in my tracks. I've never needed to call a lawyer in my life. Why do I even need one for this case? I don't have any broken bones. Listen, for an experienced lawyer, that's a softball question. But here's the problem. Most intake reps aren't really ready for that question. They're not ready for a lot of questions. They haven't been trained to understand the claimant's mentality. This isn't practice. This isn't a warm up. This is the race. What you say, what questions you ask, that's the race. And you're not guaranteed a next lap. Welcome to the Intake Playbook, the podcast where we transform your law firm's intake process into a secret weapon. I'm your host, Gary Falkowitz, and I've spent more than a decade helping law firms across the country maximize their intake performance. If you want to stop leaving cases on the table, create a better client experience, and grow your revenue, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. All right. So this week, I heard a caller from one of the law firms that is a part of my masterclass, who also happens to be one of my consulting clients. I heard one of their callers say something that stopped me in my tracks. This is what they stated. I've never needed to call a lawyer in my life. Why do I even need one for this case? I don't have any broken bones. And it got me to think for a moment. When I sit down in a room, I've sat down in a room where there have been 100 people, and I've said, they're all lawyers. And I've said, do me a favor, raise your hand if you've ever been in an accident. And about half of the attorneys raised their hand. And I say, okay, hands down. Now do me a favor and raise your hand if you've ever been in an accident and you've been injured. Okay, now we're looking at about 20 to 25% of the people in the room raising their hand. Okay, hands down. Now I say, raise your hand if you've ever been in an accident, you've been injured, and you needed a personal injury lawyer. And about 10 to 15% of the audience raises their hands. What does this tell us? It tells us that most of the people, the overwhelming majority of the people that call our firm, have never needed to call a personal injury lawyer in their lives. And they could be middle-aged folks. They don't know what to expect. Sure, they've seen some commercials. Sure, they know some brands. Sure, they've heard that there are big settlements, but they have no idea what to expect. Now, when you get back to the quote I just told you, to the caller that called up that said, I don't have any broken bones. I've never needed a lawyer before. Why do I even need one for this case? Listen, for an experienced lawyer like you or myself or some of our close friends, that's a softball question, right? That's where we get to explain that insurance companies are not on your side, that they're trying to settle cases as fast as possible for as little as possible. And we can explain all the resources we have. But here's the problem. Most intake reps aren't really ready for that question. They're not ready for a lot of questions. They haven't been trained to understand the claimant's mentality. They don't anticipate the doubt, the nervousness, or the fear of being taken advantage of. And then we fail to anticipate it, which means we likely lose. Now, I use this type of example in my masterclass a lot. If I asked you to run around the track as fast as you possibly can, I'd get one time. Now, if I asked you to race someone who is running next to you and try to beat them, and that person was very close in speed to your speed, do you think that lap would be faster than the one that you ran by yourself? Yeah, absolutely. 100 out of 100 times. Why? Because competition brings out our best. And that's the mentality that I need every intake rep to adopt. This isn't practice. This isn't a warm up. This is the race. What you do, how quickly you answer, how you answer questions, what you anticipate, what you say, what questions you ask. That's the race. And you're not guaranteed a next lap. You're not guaranteed a next call. You have to assume a few things. To win in our industry, you have to assume a few things. Number one, the claimant is going to call other law firms and likely has before they called yours. Number two, they think that a lawyer might take advantage of them. Yes, that's what they think. Well, if they're not paying you up front, what's really happening? They don't understand what a contingency fee agreement is. It's your job to explain it. It's your job to be able to say this is the most favorable agreement that someone can sign, because that means you're only paying if we win. And number three, they're looking for a reason not to work with a law firm. That's the challenge you have to get over. You've got to be able to convince them of all the positive, all of the benefits that they get with hiring your law firm. And if you don't win them now, there's absolutely no promise that you will ever speak with them again. I talk about that first conversation all the time with my consulting clients, with my masterclass, when I'm on stage at conferences. That first conversation is by far the most important conversation you can have with somebody. Oftentimes, we don't even get that first conversation. We're just following up and sending text messages or emails or making phone calls, and we never get to speak with them. But if we get them on the phone, you better have all of your resources available to convert that lead into a client. So there are a few bullet points here that I need you to remember in order to shift this intake mentality. Number one, I want you and your team to anticipate objections. I want you to train your reps to expect skepticism and questions like, why do I even need a lawyer? Or what's your experience like? How much will my case settle for? Can I speak with somebody now? How long is this whole thing going to take? You got to have those answers, and you've got to be able to respond with confidence, not confusion. I want you to adopt the competitor's mindset. The caller is nervous. They've dedicated time to this one phone call. Literally, they said to themselves the night before they called, tomorrow at 11:15, I'm finally going to call a lawyer's office. That's how they prepare. It's not some impromptu phone call that they're making in between dropping one child off and picking another one up. They've been preparing to make this phone call. And if you adopt the competitor's mindset, then you'll understand that you need to sell them. You need to remove their anxiety. You need to understand that every call is the race. There is no next lap. There is no second chance. Your rep may only have one shot to earn their trust. And number three, elevate the first conversation. You have to teach your team that the first few minutes are not just about gathering information or asking that terrible question of, so how have you heard of us? Get rid of that question. It's about proving value and calming doubt. It's about potentially escalating if it's a qualified lead. It's about providing a decision within 3 minutes, or conveying CPR, which stands for compassion and proactive reassurance, within 15 seconds. And without that reassurance, without that confidence, without that decision, you're just recording information. You're not very valuable. So whether it's mass torts, single event, car accident, whatever type of practice area you're working with, the principles don't change. The first conversation determines everything. And if your reps don't have that mentality, the mentality that they're in a race and the skills to anticipate the potential client's questions, you're losing cases to firms that do. Now let's go. Let's run. Let's race. And let's win. Thank you for listening to the Intake Playbook Podcast. If this episode sparked a new idea or insight, take a moment to screenshot it and post it in the Intake Playbook group on Facebook. Share what resonated with you or what you'd like me to dive into next. Your input helps shape this podcast, and I'd love to hear from you. Let me ask you this. Is your intake process maximizing every opportunity? If not, I created the Intake Masterclass to help. Inside, you'll get access to the tools and strategies I've used to help firms transform their intake process and turn missed opportunities into measurable wins. Plus, you'll join a network of professionals all focused on growing their firms. The ROI you'll see from refining your intake will speak for itself. Visit intakeplaybook.com today and start making every lead count. Thank you again for spending your time with me on the Intake Playbook Podcast. Remember, intake isn't just about systems. It's about building trust and creating connections. Keep pushing forward. And if you're looking for more resources or details from today's episode, check out the show notes at intakeplaybook.com. I'll see you there.